Hi everyone, happy Monday from Los Angeles. I had another technical issue. For some reason my computer would not let me go live, so we're going to try this from my phone and hope that nothing crazy happens. So this is part 3 of my series of talks for the Integrate Trauma Informed Network. The first talk was a little bit about how you can support your colleagues who need a little bit of support in understanding what trauma-informed care is. The second talk was on identifying warning signs of burnout. And then today we're going to finally get to how to confront those warning signs of burnout if you're experiencing them yourself. So again, this session is really highly influenced from one of my favorite books ever, which is Stewardship by Laura Vandernoot-Lipsky. And I'll put a link, as soon as the video is available, I'll put a link in the comments to the Trauma Stewardship Institute, where you can read more about Laura and her work and listen to her TED Talk. And I just got an email the other day that she's coming out with a new book soon, so I'm really excited about that. So the way that Laura explains how we can confront the effects of burnout, confront the effects of trauma in our work, is in a model called the 5 directions. And I'll put a link also to an image of the 5 directions model in the comments of this video when it's available. And I'm just going to run through what the 5 directions point to, and then I'm going to give you a few of my favorite strategies from each of the different directions, kind of subcategories. So the first direction, so it kind of goes north, south, east, west, and then the 5th direction, which is a daily practice of centering ourselves. So north includes creating space for inquiry, asking ourselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? How is this working for me? Is it working for me? And is trauma mastery a factor for me? And we can define trauma mastery as a kind of advanced coping mechanism that many of us use, where we use the work that we do as a way to gain control over the trauma that we've experienced. And I always want to talk a little bit about trauma mastery because I think many of us have gotten into the work that we do in helping other people through their trauma because we've experienced a trauma in our lives. And the way we want to think about trauma mastery is not that it's wrong to get into our work because we've had our own experiences. It's just that we have to make sure that we've taken care of ourselves. We've worked through our own trauma, so that's not going to affect the work that we're doing with other people. And we'll talk a little bit about one of those strategies here in a minute. So that's north, creating space for inquiry. East is choosing our focus. So figuring out where we're putting our focus. Are we kind of glass half full or glass half empty kind of people? Are we focusing on the negatives or the positives? Are we one of those people who can have 10 awesome things happen and one not so awesome thing happen in our day? We focus on that one not so awesome thing. And then what is our plan B? And that's the piece where I always get a little nervous when I'm doing a training on this topic. Is I'm not telling everyone to go out there and quit their jobs and go for their plan B right away, but knowing what our plan B is, what our backup plan is, what will we be doing if we weren't doing our work that we're doing right now, just having that gives us a little bit of freedom and knowing that there's other options out there other than what we're doing in the moment. South is about building compassion and community. So creating what's called a microculture. So that chosen community within a larger community. So that might be within your university, you're creating a group of people that you can count on and that will hold you accountable. Or within your workplace, you're creating a group. Within your school, you're creating a group. Within your family even, you might be creating that group. And so that's really to encourage you and to kind of keep you grounded and sane, but also to hold you accountable when you need that. And then the other piece of building compassion and community is practicing compassion for self and for others. So taking care of ourselves, giving ourselves a break when we need a break, and translating that to other people as well. I always like to keep the phrase in mind, people are doing the best that they can with what they have and what they know. That was a big piece of one of Brene Brown's books, and I really have held on to that when I'm coming up against difficult people who are doing things that I don't always appreciate, but trying to keep in mind that they're probably doing the best that they can. West is finding balance. So trying to engage with our lives outside of the work that we're doing, moving our bodies, moving energy through, and practicing gratitude. And again, we're going to get into some more concrete strategies for each of these. And then finally, the fifth direction, which is the daily practice of centering ourselves. So what I like to do when I train on this topic, this is one of my absolute favorite trainings to do, and I combine this talk with the one that I did 2 weeks ago now, where we talk about the warning signs and then we dive right into these strategies. But just for the sake of this platform, I separated them to make sure each talk was shorter. So what I would typically do is introduce the 5 directions and then have people get into small groups of like 4 or 5 people probably max. And they're each going to get a little baggie here, like one of these little gift baggies, and inside the bag is going to be a bunch of the strategies, the specific strategies from the 5 directions. And what I'll do is I'll have them pull out the strategies, and I've written all of that, some directions down on the slips of paper in there. So each group gets their own bag. They each start with a different one of the 5 directions, and then I'll give them some time to talk about that, and then the bags will rotate. The group will stay the same. And usually that's the really interesting piece of this is that's the part of the training that's usually the longest. I like to have at least an hour for that if that's possible, but people always say they want more time. Even when I'm giving them 10 to 15 minutes per bag, I mean, you have to think that's 5 different directions, and then they're doing each one. People always want more time for this. So this is really, people tend to find these strategies to be really speaking to them. So I'm just going to share one of my favorites from each of the 5 directions and each of the subcategories from the 5 directions. And we're going to start, so the way that I ask people to do this is on the slip of paper, it will have a description of the direction or of the strategy, and then below it I'll have what we call a do now. So that's taken away from all of my years working in middle school, where all the students came in and they had a do now that they had to do as soon as they sat down. Well, that's what I want participants in my groups to do, is learn about it briefly, talk about it, and then do something right there in the moment today, right now, which is what I'm going to encourage you to do as well as we're going through these. And hopefully you'll come back to these and read the book or get in touch with me about how we can partner to bring this training to you if it's something that you feel is valuable. So the first direction, north, creating space for inquiry, it asks, why am I doing what I'm doing? And so this strategy says, regularly write down why you are doing what you're doing. What is your intention? And to keep it somewhere. When you're feeling yourself going astray, returning to your written intention, reminding yourself what it is about for you and what it is definitely not about. So right now, I want you to write down why you're doing the work that you're doing. What is your intention? And sock that away, put it in your pocket, tear it out of your notebook, and hang on to that for a rainy day when you need it. Another piece from the north is asking ourselves, is this working for me? So what this strategy will have you do is brainstorm 5 ways in which you think what you are doing is working for you. Take 3 deep breaths and then review your list. Assess to what degree those ways are or are not in your best interest or the best interest of those that you serve. So why am I doing? Why is this work working for me? Okay, and am I doing it with integrity in light of those reasons? And then finally, coming back to that trauma mastery piece, kind of the last component of the north direction. It asks you to consider what degree trauma mastery may be a factor in your work. Asking yourself why you're doing the work and see if there are any historical wounds that motivate you. And again, it's okay if we're motivated or inspired by experiences that we've had ourselves. That's totally fine. But as long as we need to tend to those historical wounds and seek our own healing and self-care in that, so that we're not having any of that transference to our patients, our clients, our students, so that we can make sure that, again, we're doing this work with integrity. Moving on to East, where am I choosing our focus? So here's the first strategy. Where am I putting my focus? So again, I want you to do this right now if you can, if you're watching. So thinking of a challenging work situation. Write down 3 things that make it challenging, and write down 3 things that you appreciate about it. Look at your 2 lists and ask yourself, where am I more likely to focus and why? So think of that challenging work situation, write those 2 lists, and then ask yourself, where am I more likely to put my focus and why? And the second piece of East is, what is your plan B? So again, this is a strategy you can do right now, asking yourself, if I weren't doing the work that I'm doing now, what would I love to do? Sometimes just having that backup plan, that plan B, gives us a little bit of freedom in the work that we have now. And some of the subsequent strategies in that category are things like, think of 5 ways over the next 5 months that you can take 1 step towards your plan B. Tell 5 people in your life what your plan B is and have them hold you accountable. So it's not necessarily, again, saying that you have to act on that plan B, but having some pieces in place, again, it gives us a little bit of that freedom. Don't tell your boss I told you to go out and quit your job. That's not what I'm saying. Moving on to South, building compassion and community. So the first piece is creating that microculture. So what I would love for you to do right now is identify the members of your microculture. So again, think of these as people who are kind of within the subculture that you've created yourself, kind of your support group of folks, and think about to what degree they nurture hopefulness, accountability, and integrity in your work. And then think about whether you need stronger role models in any of those areas. So again, that's hopefulness, accountability, and integrity. Do you need to add maybe some people to your microculture? Do you need to change your microculture? Considering that. This is one of my favorites, practicing compassion for myself and others. So what you could do in one of these strategies is to generate a list of 6 people or situations in your life where you think an increase in your compassion could significantly alter your dynamic. So that coworker that really gets under your skin, that student that really gets under your skin, that client that you find really challenging, whoever that might be, try to think of 6 of those people or particular situations that would work too, and make an intention to approach one of these people or situations with increased compassion each month for the next 6 months. And note how the dynamic might change. I just really love that one because so often I think, I know I do this, we're quick to blame a difficult interaction on another person. Oh, this coworker doesn't understand, they're so frustrating, but when we shift the dynamic to see what we can do, well, I can approach this person's situation with more compassion. Okay, let's see how that changes the dynamic. I always say we can only control ourselves, right? That's what I always tell my middle schoolers. Moving on to finding balance, the West direction. So one of the strategies is what can I do for large-scale systematic change? I'm sorry, this is still in the South, building compassion and community. What can I do for large-scale systematic change? So this strategy asks you to think of an area in your life where you are part of a dominant group. So that might be race, class, sexual identity, some other area, and generate a list of 4 ways that you could be an ally to someone. Dedicate 1 action per week using your privilege, for example, or for good. So for example, if you're a U.S. citizen, research a group working for the rights of immigrants and refugees to see how you might be able to help. So again, trying to figure out, okay, what areas do I hold privilege in? And how can I work and be intentional towards supporting people, organizations, efforts, activism in an area where I hold privilege, using that privilege for large-scale systematic change. Now we're moving to the West, finding balance. So the first piece in that is engaging with our lives outside of work, which I know a lot of us struggle with. I know that I have in the past as well. And I really love this strategy because it really takes us back to history and the fact that people really worked hard to give us breaks and vacations and reasonable work weeks. So the strategy is to try to remember the labor movement and the countless individuals who worked hard to create weekends and breaks for more humane working conditions. Resolve to honor those who have gone before you by agreeing to only a sustainable work schedule and sticking to it. So what you could do right this minute is to think about, what is a sustainable work schedule for me? What does that actually look like? What are the hours? When do I take breaks? How many breaks do I have? How long is my lunch? What time do I get there? What time do I go home? How often do I take a vacation? How many days a week do I work? And come up with some strategies about how you can stick to that sustainable work schedule, because a lot of people fought really hard to give us that right for breaks and weekends and stuff like that. Also in finding balance in the West is moving energy through. So that can be something physical. Another one of the strategies is practicing some breathing exercises, walking, biking, running, just moving your body. But this particular strategy encourages you to initiate a co-counseling relationship with a colleague or friend who you can call on regularly. Agree to counsel each other, if only for 5 minutes. Let your friends start the talking and listen attentively with a calming presence. Then take your turn. Say what is ever in your heart and mind, moving it out of your system while your partner in the exercise listens attentively for 5 minutes. Repeat frequently. So what you can do right now is think about who that person could be if you were to establish that co-counseling type of relationship with a colleague or a friend. And then commit to reaching out to them if you feel like that's a strategy that you would be interested in. Then the final piece of the finding balance direction is gratitude. So it says, every day think of one person you are grateful to and tell that person. You can start with those close to you and slowly branch out to expressing your gratitude for all the teachers in your life. The daily practice of gratitude. And then finally, coming to the center, the daily practice of centering ourselves. This is the 5th direction. And this piece says, when your day begins, close your eyes and take several deep breaths. Ask yourself, what is my intention today? If you have small children or loud chickens demanding your attention before you are conscious, ask yourself this while feeding your children or gathering the day's eggs, but create an intention for the day. So consider, what is your intention? And you can see how a lot of these strategies, the 5 directions, all kind of work into each other, because the North direction also had a piece about intention and setting your intention at the start. And then finally, this is a good one to end on. This is also in the 5th direction, the daily practice of centering ourselves. At the end of the day, before sleep overtakes you, ask yourself, what can I put down? What am I ready to be done with? And what don't I need to carry with me for another day? Put it down and don't pick it up again until the next day, if you have to. So it's just nice kind of way to relax at the end of the day before you fall asleep. Writing it out can be helpful. I used to do this activity with young people in residential living facility that I was working in. I would come in and do some groups with them, and they would have so much stuff happening between each other outside of group that one strategy we would do, we would write down whatever was bothering them, put it in a bag, and set it outside the door of the group room. And so that's a similar strategy to what that 5th direction piece was alluding to. So those are the 5 directions. I gave you a couple of strategies from each of the 5. It's a little bit potentially overwhelming just to hear them spoken, but if you can get your hands on a copy of the book, or if there's a way for us to work together and I can come and support you by doing a training, that would be awesome, because getting a chance to talk about these strategies in a group can be especially helpful. So I think with that, I'm going to call it a day and just thank you again for listening and watching. And I'm going to post a couple of links in the comments of this video. And I hope everyone can take away 1 or 2 strategies, either that I spoke to today, or just kind of take that step back to think about what kind of strategies tend to work for you, and that can help you sustain yourself in the work that you do, because it's so important. Okay, hope to talk to you all again soon. Don't hesitate to reach out.